the Howling curse. In the small town of Oakville, nestled deep in the heart of the Pacific Northwest, a legend had been passed down through generations. It spoke of a curse that lay dormant in the surrounding forests, waiting for the right moment to awaken and wreak havoc upon the unsuspecting inhabitants. For years, the legend remained nothing more than a campfire story, a tale told to frighten children and entertain tourists. But as four high school friends were about to discover, the legend was all too real, and the consequences of their actions would change their lives forever. Jake, Emma, Liam, and Olivia had been inseparable since kindergarten. They had grown up together, sharing every milestone and adventure along the way. Now, as they prepared to graduate from Oakville High, they decided to celebrate their enduring friendship with one last camping trip in the nearby forests. Emma, the planner of the group, had spent weeks researching the perfect location. She had settled on a remote campsite, deep in the heart of the woods, far from the beaten path. The others had readily agreed, eager to escape the stresses of their daily lives and spend some quality time together. As they packed their gear and set off on the winding forest road, the friends were filled with a sense of excitement and anticipation. They sang along to their favorite songs, shared stories of their past adventures, and dreamed about the future that lay ahead. But as they arrived at the campsite and began to set up their tents, a strange feeling began to settle over them. The air seemed to grow colder, and the shadows appeared to lengthen and twist in unnatural ways. Emma, ever the rational one, tried to dismiss the feeling as nerves, but she couldn't shake the sense that they were being watched. As night fell and the friends gathered around the campfire, the feeling of unease only grew stronger. The crackling of the flames and the rustling of the leaves seemed to take on an ominous tone, and the darkness beyond the circle of light felt heavy and oppressive. It was then that they first heard the howls. They were distant at first, echoing through the trees like a mournful cry. But as the night wore on, the howls grew closer and more frequent, until it seemed as though they were coming from all around the campsite. Emma tried to reassure her friends that it was just a pack of wolves or coyotes, but deep down she knew that something was wrong. The howls were unlike anything she had ever heard before, and there was a primal, almost human quality to them that sent shivers down her spine. As the friends huddled together, trying to block out the unsettling sounds, they had no idea that their lives were about to change forever. For in the depths of the forest, an ancient evil was stirring, and it had marked them as its prey. The next morning, the friends awoke to a chilly gray dawn. The events of the previous night seemed like a distant memory, and they tried to shake off the lingering unease as they prepared for their day of hiking. Liam, the most athletic of the group, had mapped out a challenging trail that would take them deep into the heart of the forest. He was eager to test his skills and push himself to the limit, and the others, despite their reservations, agreed to follow his lead. As they set off into the woods, the sun began to peek through the clouds, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. The air was crisp and clean, and the friends found themselves beginning to relax and enjoy the beauty of their surroundings. They hiked for hours, marveling at the towering trees and the lush, green undergrowth. They crossed babbling brooks and climbed steep, rocky inclines, pushing themselves harder and harder as the day wore on. But as they ventured deeper into the forest, the strange feeling from the previous night began to return. The shadows seemed to grow longer and darker, and the air took on a heavy, oppressive quality. Even the birds and insects seemed to fall silent, as though they sensed the presence of something unnatural. Emma, who had been bringing up the rear of the group, suddenly stopped in her tracks. She had caught a glimpse of something moving in the bushes, something large and dark and fast. She called out to the others, but they were too far ahead to hear her. As she stood there, frozen with fear, she heard a low, menacing growl emanating from the undergrowth. She slowly turned her head, her heart pounding in her chest, and found herself staring into a pair of glowing, yellow eyes. Before she could even scream, the creature lunged at her, its massive, wolf-like form knocking her to the ground. She felt a searing pain in her shoulder as the beast's fangs tore into her flesh, and her vision began to blur as the world around her faded to black. The last thing she heard before she lost consciousness was the sound of her friend's screams, and the howling of the creature that had attacked her. When Emma woke, she found herself lying in a hospital bed, her shoulder heavily bandaged and her body racked with pain. Her friends were gathered around her, their faces etched with worry and fear. They told her that they had managed to drive the creature off and carry her back to the campsite, where they had called for help. The authorities had launched a search for the animal, but they had found no trace of it in the surrounding woods. As Emma listened to their story, a sinking feeling began to settle in the pit of her stomach. She knew, deep down, that the creature that had attacked her was no ordinary animal. There was something unnatural about it, something that defied explanation. Over the next few days, as she recovered in the hospital, Emma began to notice strange changes in herself. Her senses seemed to be heightened, and she found herself craving raw meat in a way she never had before. Her wounds healed at an alarming rate, and she felt a strange, restless energy coursing through her veins. When she was finally released from the hospital, she returned home to find that her friends had been experiencing similar changes. Liam, who had always been the strongest of the group, now possessed a strength that bordered on superhuman. Olivia, who had always been shy and introverted, now moved with a predatory grace that was both alluring and unsettling. And then there was Jake. Emma had always harbored a secret crush on him, but now she found herself drawn to him in a way that was almost primal. His scent, his touch, his very presence seemed to ignite a fire within her that she couldn't control. As the days turned into weeks, the friends struggled to come to terms with the changes that were happening to them. They knew that they had been marked by something ancient and powerful, something that had chosen them for a purpose they couldn't yet understand. But even as they grappled with their new reality, they knew that they couldn't ignore the growing sense of danger that lurked in the shadows. For the creature that had attacked them was still out there, and it was only a matter of time before it struck again. It was a month after the attack when the first body was found, a hiker mauled to death in the same stretch of woods where the friends had been camping. The authorities blamed it on a wild animal, but Emma and her friends knew better. They gathered in secret, trying to make sense of what was happening to them. They pored over ancient texts and obscure websites, searching for any clue that might help them understand their condition. It was Olivia who finally stumbled upon the truth. In a dusty, forgotten corner of the local library, she found a book that spoke of a curse that had plagued the Pacific Northwest for centuries. It told of a tribe of shapeshifters, men and women who could transform into wolves at will, and who were bound by an ancient pact to protect the land from evil. But the book also spoke of a dark side to the curse, a twisted version of the shapeshifter's power that could be passed on through a bite or a scratch. Those who were infected by this dark curse would become werewolves, savage beasts driven by an insatiable hunger for flesh and blood. As Olivia read the passage aloud, a heavy silence fell over the group. They knew, without a doubt, that they had been infected by the dark curse. They were werewolves, and the creature that had attacked them was one of their own. The first full moon after their discovery was a night that none of them would ever forget. As the sun set and the silvery light began to bathe the town, they felt a change come over them. Their bodies began to twist and contort, hair sprouting from every pore as their teeth elongated into razor-sharp fangs. They could feel the beast within them, clawing at their minds, demanding to be set free. And then, with a howl that shook the very foundations of the earth, they transformed. They became the monsters they had always feared, creatures of pure instinct and bloodlust. They rampaged through the town, tearing through anything and anyone that stood in their way. They reveled in the thrill of the hunt, in the taste of fresh blood on their tongues. But even in the midst of their frenzy, a part of them remained human. A part of them watched in horror as they committed unspeakable acts, powerless to stop the beast that had taken control. When the sun finally rose and the curse receded, they found themselves back in their human forms, naked and blood-soaked in the middle of the town square. They looked at each other with haunted eyes, the weight of what they had done crushing down on them like a physical force. They knew that they couldn't go on like this. They had to find a way to break the curse, to reclaim their humanity before it was too late. In the weeks that followed, the friends threw themselves into their search for a cure. They reached out to every contact they could find, from ancient shamans to modern-day scientists, desperate for any scrap of information that might help them. But even as they searched, the beast within them grew stronger. Each full moon brought a new wave of terror, a new trail of bodies left in their wake. They knew that they were running out of time. The authorities were closing in, and the town was gripped by a sense of panic and fear. They had to act fast, before they were caught and imprisoned. Or worse, it was Jake who finally found the key. In a crumbling, abandoned church on the outskirts of town, he discovered an ancient ritual that promised to break the curse and restore their humanity. But the ritual was not without its risks. It required a sacrifice, a life given willingly in exchange for their own. And it had to be performed on the night of the full moon, when their powers were at their peak. The friends gathered in the church, their hearts heavy with the weight of what they were about to do. They knew that one of them would have to die, to pay the price for their salvation. In the end, it was Emma who volunteered. She had always been the strongest of them, the one who held them together through every trial and tribulation. And she knew deep down that this was her destiny. As the moon rose and the ritual began, Emma felt a strange sense of peace wash over her. She knew that she was doing the right thing, that her sacrifice would not be in vain. And as the life drained from her body and the curse was finally broken, she knew that her friends would go on to live the lives they had always dreamed of. Free from the beast within, free to be the people they were always meant to be. Years have passed since that fateful night in the abandoned church. The town of Oakville has slowly begun to heal, the memories of the werewolf attacks fading into legend and myth. But for Jake, Liam, and Olivia, the scars of that time will never fully fade. They carry the weight of Emma's sacrifice with them every day, a constant reminder of the price they paid for their humanity. They have gone on to live good lives, lives filled with love and purpose and meaning. But they will never forget the curse that brought them together, or the friend who gave her life to save them all. And sometimes, on nights when the moon is full and the wind howls through the trees, they swear they can still hear her voice, calling out to them from beyond the grave. A reminder that even in death, she will always be with them, watching over them, guiding them towards the light. For in the end, that is the true legacy of the Howling curse. Not the terror and the bloodshed, but the unbreakable bond of friendship and sacrifice. A bond that will endure long after the last howl has faded into the night.